Hello students, hope you are done with your preliminary examination and getting ready for your main examination, where now the TSPSC has announced its dates from 21st of October to 27th of October. And myself, Emmanuel, if you want to learn geography and environment exclusively, and that too with a precise question and answers methods, you can just contact me to the given number which is there. And I'm going to conduct a workshop on 15th of this month, that is Saturday evening. And for the updates, you just join my Telegram channel and I'll see you there on 15th. Thank you very much. Very good evening, students. Welcome you all. Let's start this discussion for today's day 3 question. And the question is, examine the multifaceted role of mangrove forest in India's coastal ecology. Discuss the potential consequences of mangrove loss for both the environment and the local communities. So you are supposed to examine the first part, the multifaceted role, the multifaceted role of mangrove forests and in India's coastal ecology. And apart from that, you are supposed to discuss the potential consequences of mangrove loss for both environment and the local communities. So if I talk about your multifaceted role, yes, we do have a role like environmental role, isn't it? And we have a role called socio-economic role, isn't it? And apart from that, apart from these two roles, majorly it is social role and the economic role. This environmental role and the socio-economic role. Moving further apart from this multifaceted role, you are supposed to talk about, as you examine this, you are supposed to discuss about your mangrove loss as well. The moment there is a loss in the mangrove or the mangrove forest across your coastal ecology, what can be your consequences? And as we discuss, you should also make sure that you give a probable solution for that loss as to what can be your methods, and that will be how your conclusion will be, isn't it? So now let's start with your intro. With regard to intro, what can be your intro? See, you can start with your definition as to what your mangroves are, and then their location, isn't it? And what kind of role they play in just a word or so. There is environmental role and socio-economic role. That is the one which you are supposed to put forth in your definition. So let's say now I say that mangrove forests are a unique salt tolerant trees along your coastal regions or along your marshy and brackish water regions, which plays a major role in defining the pristine biodiversity and a greater amount of economic activity for the local communities. As well, it is also acting as a guardians of the coast. So that will be my introduction. So you can just use few words, something like this, saying that these are considered to be the guardians of the coast. Why do I say? Because environmentally there is a greater amount of boon because of your presence of mangroves. Apart from that, economically and socially there is a good amount of value across that region because of the presence of mangroves. So due to this, they are acting as a guardians to the coast, across the coast, which is intertidal zones, where you can call them as a zone which is an intermediary zone between your oceanic waters as well as your continental land. So that's the reason why you can use this word called guardians of the coast. Now moving further, within your body, what can be your answer? See, starting with economic significance. What are the different forms of economic significances that have been obtained because of the presence of mangroves? One is, you have first and foremost thing, you have coastal protection from vagaries or the climatical events which are occurring along your oceanic waters, whether it be storm surges, whether it be cyclones, or it be any other events, excessive amount of wave actions, tsunamis. So these are acting as a protectors of the coast. So coastal regions have been protected. And then it is also trying to, apart from the coastline, from the sea waters, it is also protecting the land in such a way that it is trying to reduce erosion. Whatever the sediments which have been brought down, they are not getting into the oceanic waters or the sea waters at a faster pace, where they have been trying to stop along the mangrove regions because of the entangled roots across the regions. So it is trying to act as a breaker. So now erosion has been obstructed, and apart from that, as I told you, it is also acting as a mitigating activity from all these disasters as well. So that will be your coastal protection first. That will be your first point. And the second point, you talk about your regions of, sorry, I'm very sorry for that. This is not an economic significance, it is your environmental significance. Yeah, make it a small correction of it. Yeah. And then you have biodiversity, which is considered to be the biodiversity hotspots. Why do we say that these are regions of biodiversity hotspots? You have a variety of species which thrive across these regions. You have good amount of flora, you have good amount of fauna, and within that fauna you have terrestrial fauna as well as aquatic fauna, and you have amphibious fauna as well, and you have like mollusks, and you have avian fauna. So in this manner, wherein we have a different kinds of fauna which thrive across this region, and you have a variety of species of plants, trees, animals, animals in such terrestrial animals, aquatic animals, the flying animal. So this is the regions where you consider to be as a biodiversity hotspots, which is very pristine, where you are supposed to conserve them, isn't it? So these are your biodiversity hotspots. And the third one, these are the regions where the carbon has been sequestrated. These are the regions of carbon sequestration, because you have good amount of green cover, you have good amount of organic material, where this organic debris and the organic material store large amount of carbon into those regions, or into this mass, making sure that it is acting as a storehouse of carbon. So carbon is better getting stored into these regions and is sequestering and is trying to reduce the amount of emissions into the atmosphere. So it is acting as a region because it is a marshy land. So this is a carbon sequestration region, and in such a way that it is trying to mitigate climate change activities, isn't it? Next, third one, the fourth one, yeah, it is acting as a water filter. Why do I say it is a water filter? See, whenever you have an oil spill along your oceans, or you have good amount of polluted material, polluted waters which are moving towards your oceans. Now all these pollutants, whether it be from your oil spillages or it be from your industrial activities and all these pollutants have been cleansed because of your presence of mangrove forest. The barks of the mangroves or the dried leaves of the mangroves try to filter these pollutants, making sure that the salinity or the pH value of those waters have been properly balanced. So it is acting as a water filter, so as to make sure that sensitive marine habitats have been conserved. So these are your environmental significances. Now moving further, socio-economic significance. What can be your socio-economic significance? First and the foremost thing, you have good amount of livelihood across that region. Because the moment you have good amount of aquaculture, the moment you have good amount of tree cover, you have good amount of wood available, you have good amount of the fish catch across that region, because it is having a greater diversity of fish species. And then you have good amount of medicinal plants. You have good amount of bees, because the moment you have a good amount of plant species, obviously you have good amount of flowers. And the moment you have good amount of flowers, you can obtain good amount of honey as well across the region. So you get good amount of forest produces from that region. So wherein you have a better livelihood across this region, your economic activity is in a much better manner. And then you have good amount of food security. Food security has been fulfilled over here because of the good amount of availability of fish, and food security in such a way that it is also proving, or this is a region where you have sufficient available of food, you have both food security as well as nutritional security. So food security and as well as nutritional security has been properly been supplemented along that region. And this is your first, this is your second. Next, third one, you have good amount of tourism and other recreation activities, because people come here for this tourist activities to explore this forested region and move across these regions, kayaking activities, so bird watching activities, exploring different regions of unique biodiversity. So because of which we have good amount of tourism across this region, tourism and recreation. So these are your activities across this region, which is your socio-economic activities. And apart from that, you have good amount of culturally significant hotspots where cultural values have been upkept. Yeah, the third one, you have your cultural values are preserved across these regions. Cultural values are also been preserved across the region. So these are your socio-economic significance, the points which you are supposed to note them. Now moving further, there's another part where you're supposed to discuss the potential consequence of mangrove loss for both environment and the local communities. You can just write down the consequences. What can be your consequences? One, vulnerability across coast, isn't it? So there is a greater vulnerability across the coast during this high wave actions, or during cyclones, tsunamis, or storm surges, or whatever it be. Whenever you have all these things, whenever you have these storms, yes, it can be destructive along the continental landmass, so which is trying to disturb your both infrastructure as well as your livelihoods. That will be the first point. And the second one, you have decline in fisheries. Why do I say that there is decline in fisheries? The moment you have a loss in the mangrove forest cover, the kind of species diversity reduces. The moment that reduces, the flora and the fauna, the diversity gets reduces, specifically the fish catch also reduces. So the economic activity has been getting disturbed for the livelihoods. So there is decline in fisheries. Before that, you can also talk about, even just before this, you can talk about there is biodiversity loss. You can talk about biodiversity loss, and then you talk about your decline in fisheries, because the moment the biodiversity is disturbed, even that will be a disturbance across your fish catch as well. And fourth one, you have an impact across your climate change. See, generally to speak about this in the classrooms a lot, let's take an example like decline in fisheries. During this periods of 2001 to 2012 and 13, the amount of interest related to mangrove growth along the coast of Gujarat is very, very negligible. And the importance towards your industrial activity is very, very high, due to which there is a greater amount of decline in the mangrove cover across the region, during which the fishermen across Gujarat coast, mostly of a specific community, specific religious community, people who are into this fishing activity have lost their livelihood and they were forced to migrate from that region in order to search for a better livelihood or a better job. The only reason is just because of the lack of interest or lack of initiative by the government agencies. The growth of your mangroves have been very much minimal and there is no proper growth, but there is greater growth in your industrial activity led to a greater amount of infrastructure across your coast, like that is for your shipping activity, the ports and all. So the traffic, the coastal traffic, the ship traffic has been increased. The moment your ship traffic increased, what happens? There is greater amount of heat which has been generated and the waters are much warmer, which is not congenial for the fish to survive across the region. And if at all, if this mangrove forests were abundant across the region, they'll be acting as a filters and they'll be making sure that coastal regions have been balanced with the proper pH as well as the proper waters, the proper temperatures. But that has not been taken care properly, due to which the fishermen across the region were forced to migrate from that regions. So in this manner, that's just an example for you to understand. But yes, because the consequences of the mangrove loss led to vulnerability of the coast whenever there is hazardous events across the region which may lead into a disaster, and there is decline in the biodiversity, which is pristine, the biodiversity has been reduced, decline in fishing activity or fisheries activities, and the climate change. What is this? The moment your coastal region have been very much fragile, yes, the impact of, there is a greater amount of increase in the climatic change activities. And as I told you, yes, there is sea level rise due to this climate change, and there is a rise in the temperature of the waters. If at all, if these mangroves were there, yes, the amount of swiftness of the change in the climate will be reduced, will be lowered. So this is how climate change is also making sure that, the mangroves also play a role in making sure that climate change acceleration will be reduced. So these are your 4 points which we can put forth here in your consequences and loss. And now, because you have good amount of opportunity, now you are supposed to write down a conclusion, or it can be a solution. It cannot be a solution, but it can be a conclusion in order to reduce this loss. Yes, in India we have this program called MISTI, isn't it? So as to make sure the loss, or it is presenting a very significant move by the government so as to reduce the loss of livelihood for the local communities, as well as improve the growth of mangrove cover, and making sure there is a greater amount of financial incentive supports to the coastal communities, making sure that they have been conserved as well as they have been sustainable. So this MISTI program is playing a role. You can just say that these are invaluable assets along the coastal regions, and which are supposed to be conserved so as to make sure the environment, the biodiversity has been sustainable, as well as the livelihoods across the people across the region, the livelihood cannot be disturbed, and making sure that sustainable living should be prevailing across that region, so as to make sure that for all these things, yes, the mangrove conservation is the need of the hour, and there should be a proper collaboration of the government and the government initiatives, the NGOs, the individuals and the other local communities should play a part in making sure that mangroves have been conserved and be in a sustainable manner. So that can be your conclusion. Okay? Because you're trying to tell your evaluator saying that yes, I'm abreast with the current updates as well as you try to code this MISTI scheme as well. Is that clear? So that's the end of this discussion. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow with a new question, and please do write the answers. If you are not able to write, you can contact me through Telegram or through any other source of material, sources. Please do contact me. I'll just share my number which you can contact me. 888 501 2717. This is my office number, 888 501 2717. So you can just ping us if you have any doubts for your supports, so that accordingly I can extend my support. As I told you, we'll be starting this complete mains program for TSPSC immediately after your UPSC prelims, and I'll also extend a good amount of support for UPSC mains as well. If you want good amount of main support, yes, you can just contact me. And there are students who have approached you who wants UPSC prelims and mains complete program of both prelims and mains. It's also available. You can just follow my Telegram channel, which is provided, and you can also ping me if at all if you want a one-on-one session to clear your doubts. Okay, so this is my number, 888-501-2717. This is my office number. So anytime between morning 10 to evening 8, you can just contact to this number. So thank you very much. Bye bye.